So what do I mean when I'm talking about sleep quality? What we mean here is it's really the relative balance of time that you spend in these different stages of sleep. And so in order to, wake up feeling rested, we really need to be spending a good amount of time in what we call slow wave sleep, or what we might refer to as deep sleep. So this is stages 3 and stage 4. They look very similar with these high amplitude or high voltage slow moving waves, right? So you can see these here. This is what someone's EEG would look like if they were hooked up to that while they were sleeping. And so you would see brain waves that look like this. And you can see these are much higher and slower than what our EEG looks like when we're awake, where we see these much smaller, short spikes in activity across the brain. So critically, during slow wave sleep, metabolic rate goes down on average in the brain, particularly in parts of the brain associated with arousal and with muscle movement, right? You're laying still and you're resting. But we do see an increase in activity in some of the integrative and associative areas of the brain, and this suggests that we're consolidating some information during this time, which is also important to learning and memory and to growth. Another important phase of sleep is REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. And this is the stage of sleep where we actually see an increase in overall activity in the brain. In fact, our brain looks very much like it does when we're awake. In particular, we see activation in areas that control muscle movements, and areas in the brainstem are more active, right? So if you watch Gordy sleep sometimes and he twitches a little, he looks like he's running. This is what's happening for us too during REM sleep. You might see people's eyes moving around under their lids, right? This is why we call it rapid eye movement sleep. And so this is the part of sleep where people are dreaming, right? So we also see increased activation in the limbic system, or the emotional parts of the brains. So the amygdala is particularly more active. And there's also a big jump in activation in areas that integrate visual information, right? Dreams are highly visual, so you see all kinds of activation in those areas of the brain. And you also see a decrease in activation in the frontal cortex, right? So we're very disinhibited during the dreaming state. So this allows all of that activation from the amygdala and the limbic system to come forth. And so this is part of why dreams are so weird and so deeply emotionally tinged. And so ideally, again, we're going to have a sleep cycle, right? So you need all of these stages of sleep, but ideally you should be cycling through getting to slow wave sleep about every 90 minutes or so. And so this is what our sleep cycle should look like. Again, this is an idealized version, but you start out awake and you have these low voltage, high frequency EEG, and then we drop down into stage 1, this where it looks, again, very much like awake, but you're sort of in that light sleep, right? You're easy to rouse at that point. Dropping down into stage 2, which is characterized by those spindles and K complexes. We're not really going to learn about what these are, but this is just how we're going to identify stage 2 sleep. Then dropping down into stage 3, and then into stage 4, where we've got these slow, high voltage waves that are occurring. And then so here we're about an hour and a half in when we reach that, and then cycling back up, and then reaching REM sleep for the first time. And so this would be having your first dreams, and then cycling back down into slow sleep, and back up, and then as the night progresses, you get into less and less deep sleep. And this is why often you might feel that you dream more in the morning, or you feel like you remember your dreams more in the morning. This is often because most people do experience more REM sleep closer to the time that they wake up, because they're spending less time in those slower stages of sleep there. And so this, again, is what our sleep cycle should look like. And so we should be cycling through about every hour and a half or so. So we've talked a lot about what sleep should look like and how it can get disrupted. But why do we sleep? Right, so this is a big question, and we don't have a particular one answer to it. Right, sleep appears to be absolutely essential. Right, if you deprive people of sleep, they fall apart. It doesn't take very long for that to happen, and so sleep is clearly very important. But what are the mechanisms, or what are its key functions? And so some of the hypotheses about this and evidence as to the importance of sleep is first that sleep is key to restocking stores of energy, right? So certainly we use a lot of energy over the course of the day. Our brains particularly consume a large part of the energy of our body, and so that we need to sleep in order to restock that energy. Particularly, we need to restock glycogen, which is a really key energy source for the brain. And so there certainly is evidence to that, but also there's other things that seem to be really key to sleep as well. And so another one is that we need to decrease our brain temperature. So again, as we're using our brain a lot during the day, it heats up, and our whole body heats up as well. But so it's possible that one of the functions of sleep is to decrease our brain temperature. Certainly brain temperature does go down during sleep, and so this could be one of the key functions of sleep. Another hypothesis is that the function of sleep is to dream, and that dreaming really is a key aspect of sleep. And some of the evidence that speaks to this is the fact that if we deprive people of sleep, not only do they seem to preferentially prefer more of that slow wave sleep to help them get rested, they also have an increase in REM sleep, which is the dreaming state. So we also seem to preferentially need REM sleep, and so our body prioritizes dreaming over other types of sleep. In some cases, even over slow wave sleep, and so this is why people may have a lot of dreams but not feel very rested at times. And this has also been shown through what they call preferential REM sleep deprivation studies. And so what you do in these is you hook people up to an EEG, you look at their brain waves, and every time they enter REM sleep and start dreaming, you wake them up. And you compare that to people who've just been woken up randomly or woken up in other stages of sleep other than REM. And what we find is that people who have been woken up during REM sleep and so have not gotten that, they really go to pieces faster. They have more cognitive issues and deteriorate more quickly than those who are woken up during other stages of sleep. And they've shown this with humans, and they've shown it with rats. And so it really does seem that dreaming seems to be really important. But so then the question arises, right, why do we dream then? What's the function of dreaming if that's really the point of sleep? Why are we dreaming in the first place? And so again, we don't have like one answer to that, but we have many hypotheses about that and some evidence to support those as important. And so one is that we may dream to use underutilized brain regions, and so there seems to be activation from pathways that we haven't used as often, and so this may be a way to keep those active, where if we don't use certain neuronal connections, they tend to atrophy and go away, and so this can be one way to keep those active and present. And so this is one hypothesis as to why we dream. It certainly seems to play a role in cognition and cognitive functioning. And so there's lots of evidence that sleep is related to problem solving and creativity, right? This Sapolsky talks about our phrase, we're going to sleep on a problem. There really is evidence that particularly for mental tasks that involve, coming up with a unique solution or problem solving, sleeping seems to help with that. It helps people to be able to come up with a new and creative solution to a problem. So there seems to be that some of the integrative processes that are occurring during sleep facilitate that type of cognitive functioning. Sleep is also really important for memory and for consolidating and memorizing new information. And so evidence of this comes from all types of different studies, one being that sleep deprivation seems to disrupt this memory consolidation. So if you compare participants who have done this memory task and you let some sleep well and some don't, those who have slept well, they do better on those memory tasks. Also, the more new information you're exposed to, the more REM sleep people usually get on average. And so there seems to be that, when you're needing to integrate more information, you have more of this type of sleep that helps to integrate that information. And so this may be an important part of why we dream, right, is to form and consolidate these memories. Also, there's evidence that the patterns of activation in the hippocampal neurons, those are the areas of the brain for remembering specific things, that these seem to mirror specific tasks that you've learned during the day. And so there seems to be the patterns of activation are very similar to the task that you were doing, and so it really does seem to be the consolidation of that information. So to summarize this, hypotheses for why we sleep are that it's to restock stores of energy, to decrease our brain temperature because we need to dream, and then the reasons that we may need to dream particularly are to maintain and enhance cognitive functioning and to form and consolidate memories. And this is actually one of the hypotheses as to why kids need to sleep so much, right, is because they're learning and consolidating so much new information that they really require more sleep. They're also still growing, and so there's lots of physical reasons why they may need that more as well. So far we've talked about what sleep is, what it should look like, and why it is that we sleep. And in the next section we'll turn to talking about the relation between sleep and stress.